From Provo, Utah, this is the Ultimate Final Fantasy Podcast with your hosts, Joseph DeGolier and Caleb Schweiss. This is Ultima Final Fantasy. Welcome to Ultima Final Fantasy, the Ultimate Final Fantasy Podcast. I am Joe.
And I am Caleb.
And today we're going to be talking about Final Fantasy V.
Yeah.
We don't have any new iTunes or Stitcher reviews this week, so we're not going to be reading those, though we do, of course, encourage you guys to review our podcasts on iTunes and Stitcher, depending on which one you use. If you don't use either of those, download iTunes and rate it on iTunes, right?
Yeah. We are thinking of doing another contest, possibly, but I don't know. You guys really got to start putting out the reviews, and maybe we'll put in a sweeter prize. If there can be anything sweeter than an 1,000 Needles coffee mug.
No, we might just do the same prize again.
Oh.
We've got more listeners than we did back then.
Yeah,
so.
We could. I mean, it's still a badass mug, so
we could try it. The reason why we need reviews is because it helps our iTunes ranking. If you look for Final Fantasy, you notice that we're like 10th now, even though we were like 5th before. As far as like what podcast comes up, it just helps us out. There's a lot of dead Final Fantasy podcasts that, because they've been around for so long, they have more reviews and all that other shit. So we gotta at least nudge past those guys. I mean, we're not going to like try to beat Final Fantasy Union because they've got such a huge following. It's sick. But, we can at least beat the dead Final Fantasy podcasts in between, like Thera Side Chats and the FXN podcast. They're both dead. We should be above them just because they don't put out episodes anymore.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of crap, so.
So if you guys could please just give us reviews and ratings, we'd really appreciate it. And we'll think about doing another contest maybe in a couple months.
Yeah, and I mean, even if you're brutal, we appreciate it because we need it sometimes.
Right. Okay, well, let's get to the very little news that we have, shall we?
Yeah, let's do it. News. Okay, so there are a lot of rumors about Final Fantasy 15, like release dates, right? Yeah.
And there's even more this week. More people are coming out. Well, it's going to be March. It's going to be May. And they're quoting blogs. They're not actually quoting any, like, legitimate sources. So you guys listening to this stuff, make sure that you know your source before you put out information like that. There were, there's a lot of, like, false things and rumors posted as news on the internet, which is bullshit. I hate it when the internet, like, people on the internet do that.
Yeah, and it always explodes, too. So then you see it in passing, and you're like, oh, cool.
Well, they're doing it to get a reaction. Like, they put Final Fantasy 15 release date up, and then in their blog, they post that, oh, it's actually, like, according to this one blogger, like, that this is the release date. And sure, there was the Steam date thing that was leaked, but that's still not confirmed.
No, and I mean,
you can't post it as news.
That doesn't even make sense because none of them are on Steam. Usually PC ports take longer.
Right.
So why would they have anything on the PC, any sort of PC leak before any console leak? It doesn't make any sense.
Well, there's Gamescom that just started today. It goes, I think, to the 17th. And the rumors are, these are just rumors, that Square is going to announce something big for Final Fantasy 15, but who knows? If we find out anything, we'll tell you next week, certainly.
Yeah, or maybe even a mini-sode if it's big.
If it's big. If they do release like the release date of 15, then we will definitely.
Right. Oh, also,
we'll have a mini-sode about that.
We've discussed the Final Fantasy 14 convention.
Right.
And looking at that page, I don't know about that thing, man, because the tickets are ridiculous for one, right? They're pretty pricey.
It's for 3 days, though.
Right, but then they say
bad for a convention.
They say, well, how much stuff could they possibly have? Like, what is going to happen? And then the big thing They said something big is coming, and then they don't
Dun, dun, dun.
alleviate to anything. They don't lead you anywhere with
They
that.
don't alleviate to anything?
Yeah, they
What?
don't make anything easier. Whatever. They don't, it just doesn't mention anything whatsoever. It's just really expensive.
I think it's because I think they were gonna. Didn't we talk about this before? Like one of our earlier episodes.
We mentioned this convention.
We mentioned the convention, yeah, and I think the big thing that they were gonna announce was like the next the expansion. That's what I thought.
Is that what you think it's gonna be?
Yeah, I think they were gonna do their first big expansion.
Oh, that's true. They up to this point.
That's probably what the big announcement would be.
Is it really that big though?
That's a big announcement for that game, yes.
Yeah, but I mean, 11 had like 6.
Yeah, that's true. 11 had even more than that, I think.
Of course, 14 is also a lot bigger. Just
14's bigger, 14's newer, and
14's better. Yeah. Maybe that's what it's going to be. I don't know. But I'm still...
That's probably what it's going to be.
Yeah.
Probably.
Yeah. I was hoping it was going to be like free copies at 15. Anybody who came. Something
awesome.
huge, you know?
Huge
It's
enough.
massive.
Everybody gets a free car.
Yeah.
I only spent $120 here. You're losing so much money.
Yeah, they would do it though. They've made very questionable financial decisions in the past. At least this way we get cars out of it.
They just all have a big Final Fantasy 15 logo. It's advertising, really.
Yeah. That's how they justify it.
All right, so the only real piece of news this week is that the Record Keeper, Final Fantasy Record Keeper trailer was released. And it's in Japanese, but you guys can go, of course, look it up. It's on YouTube. And I tried translating the first line, and all the kanji proved really difficult, and so I gave up.
Yeah?
Yeah, the first line was something like, it was like, take
time to reward yourself.
Oh, yeah,
is that
like
what you're saying?
reward or applaud or congratulate. What was it? It was congratulating difficulties that you overcome well. Or something like that was the first line. I was like, what the fuck does that mean?
I don't know.
I was thinking about calling Yoshia and being like, like reading it to him and like him telling me what the fuck it's saying, but I have no idea.
I wonder if maybe it's directed at us. It's like, congratulate yourself, relax for overcoming such ordeals in these first 5 games, and kick back and play whatever the hell Record Keeper is going to be if we decide to release it in the States.
Well, what they do is they have shots, they have really like big moments from each of the games for like a second, and then they have words in between, and then they keep doing that. So like, I think the first 2 are like 1, 12, and then like 8 and 6. It's cool. It's like the whole thing. So that's really the only real piece of news that happened this week, unfortunately. If you look up Final Fantasy news, you're going to get a whole bunch of shit about Final Fantasy 15 release dates, and they have no official source. So we're not gonna pretend like it's news.
Yeah. It's just disappointment.
And now I think it is time to get to the thing that everybody's been fucking waiting for.
Oh yeah.
We of course, okay, actually real quick, I gotta talk about how, okay, we asked for emails about, your favorite side quests and stuff like that. We're gonna get to that in a later episode simply because this one's gonna be so long. So just keep that in mind. And we're gonna go from here, shall we?
Let's do it.
Okay. Caleb, don't we have something to apologize for?
Not really.
Not really? You don't
No.
think so? No?
I don't think so.
This episode's a day late, I do believe. And this episode is actually more than a day late. It's like 2 weeks late, in fact. I do believe that we gave them a 4-week notice, and I think this is week 6. It's either 5 or 6 from the time that we...
I think it's week 5, but we're past Wednesday, so...
That's true, so it's like on week 6 then.
Yeah.
So we should have had this done a little while ago, that's for sure. You ran into some difficulties now, didn't you?
Yeah. I did. It was a little bit of a pain in the ass at the very end.
The very end?
Yeah.
Where you're going through the end zone and the rift, and all those bosses over and over again. You're having trouble on those, right?
The bosses were okay. There was a couple of them that were really rough, but mostly it was trying to get enough gil to gil toss the end boss to death.
X-death to death.
Which I promised I would do. I stayed with that promise. I gil tossed the shit out of that guy. He got a lot of money, but he died, so
yeah,
didn't matter.
All right, so we're going to talk about our gameplay experiences a little later on, but for now, of course, as with all these big Final Fantasy reviews, 1 through 4, 5 is going to be the same way. We're going to talk about a little bit of the development history in case you don't already know this stuff. It was released in Japan on December 6, 1992, and it was, of course, we've talked about this before, it was the last Final Fantasy directed by Hironobu Sakaguchi, and before Final Fantasy IX, he called this his favorite Final Fantasy. It wasn't released in the States until 1999 on Final Fantasy Anthology, which was the version that we played.
Yes.
So we're going to have like certain terms and things that for those of you who played the advanced version or the iOS version or the Android version, you may get a little confused on because we're just used to calling certain things.
Yeah, like Meteo. It's not Meteor in our version. I don't know why, but it just says Meteo.
It's just like Final Fantasy IV, your version.
Yeah, in my version of 4,
was
it's like
that.
they just lazily slapped it down.
I don't think they lazily slapped it down. I mean, it's a big game to translate, and it wasn't actually the first pass at it. We'll talk about that in a second. But, it's the first time it was being released here, and the company had to do that, and they called it Meteo. Obviously, they didn't have enough space to put Meteor.
Well, that's not true, because there are bigger text bubbles that pop up in the game. Mega Flare.
Mega Flare?
Yeah. Meteo is
well,
M-E-T-E-O.
no, yeah, but like when you're selecting it from the menu, are there any that are longer than that?
Yeah. There's some that are longer than Meteo, yeah.
Because I'm thinking like Holy, Flare, those are all under 5 letters.
Yeah, the summon words, like Bahamut.
Oh, the summons. Yeah, maybe you're right.
I don't know why they wouldn't.
Meteo.
Maybe it is to save space, but I mean, putting it on a PlayStation disc, there's a lot more space than there was.
And there's certain character names, like we called her Rihanna and not Lena.
Yeah.
Which is what most people call her now. Even though in Japanese it's just Rena, which could be like...
Both.
It could be either one. Yeah.
I called her...
translated either way, so who the fuck cares?
I thought of it as Reina the whole time.
Reina?
Yeah, so I was close. I don't know.
It's the same. It's the same, like, almost the same name.
Yeah, it just makes it kind of odd if you're listening to it. Especially because these characters, they're not necessarily super, super deep. Yeah. Especially the women in these Japanese games, I've noticed. They're not...
Act like a woman.
Yeah, that part was like... I mean, she doesn't, of course, which is nice, but really weird.
Anyway, so it was written by Sakaguchi and Yoshinori Kitase. Sakaguchi apparently came up with the original structure of the story, whilst Kitase worked to lighten up the very dark story with humor, which is, I think, part of the reason, and there's been some explanation on the internet, or at least not explanation, but like, people saying, well, this might be why Final Fantasy V seems like it's so much lighter in tone than 4 or 6. Especially 6 is very dark. But 5, they apparently, this Yoshinori Kitase, he worked to make the tone very light in this one. It seems more adventure-y of a Final Fantasy. Do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do, but at the same time, they made the death scenes meaningful.
That's true, yeah.
As opposed to 4, where it's like, oh, never mind. They're alive. It's okay. Everyone's fucking fine, except for the one guy that's really awesome. He's dead.
There's at least one very, very powerful scene, which we'll talk about when we get to the story. The job system was designed by Hiroyuki Ito, along with Akihiko Matsui. Sorry about all these Japanese
And
names.
Surprisingly, there was a staff of 45 people, which is huge for a Super Nintendo game and any Final Fantasy game up to this point. I mean, I don't know, it must have been How many people were in most of the other ones? It was like
there was less than like 50.
Yeah, it was like there were like,
I think it was 7 people that made the first one.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's a pretty big staff. The thing is, I don't know. They were bringing all these people on, and what's funny, and we'll talk about the graphics in a little bit. Did you notice how this game didn't look quite as good as 4? As far as visually, like it looked a little bit dry. I don't know how to explain.
The color palette wasn't as nice.
The color palette was very dull looking, and I just thought that was surprising considering 4 was before it. Usually, each of the Final Fantasies improves its look quite a bit, and I feel like 4 to 5 was, if anything, it stayed the same.
Yeah, I agree, and I think a lot of it's just
And I'm just so surprised that 45 people working on that game, and they didn't come up with any more.
4 just looks richer, I think.
Yeah, exactly. Richer is the word I'm definitely.
Yeah, there's more. It's a wider range of colors. It's finer, and then in 5, I noticed in 5 there was a lot more of one of the things that I don't like about these early games is that you have a huge world, right? Which is fun. It's cool. But then there's nothing on the fucking world. It's like this giant emptiness.
They're all fucking like that. Except for 13.
It's ridiculous.
Honestly.
Like, and 4 didn't feel like it was that way as much.
As much? You don't think so?
I don't think so.
I think it was.
I think having the extra layers of the planet made it kind of.
Well, you can go underwater in 5. You just didn't.
I just didn't. But.
Yeah. So the game was pretty massive. Apparently it was 16 megabits, which is pretty darn big for a Super NES game.
Yeah.
Not big for a now game.
No, not even. No, it's nothing.
And hear this. I got this from the Wikipedia page. It says the Japanese authorities asked Square to not release the game on a school day because they thought kids were going to skip class for the game.
Wow.
Isn't that fucking awesome? They would never do that for a game now in the States anyway.
No, they don't care. And I did skip school for 12. 13 I was out of school, so I didn't have to skip it, but
the only one I've ever been to the release for was 13. So,
yeah. I think we were both there.
Were we?
Yeah.
We were?
Yeah, I was there with you and Caleb and Kyle, and it was at the Springville
right.
Because I had bought the game in Provo, but Provo wasn't having a midnight release, so I just bought the game again.
Okay.
And then sold the Provo one.
Nice. So there was actually an English translation in the works much earlier during the development, but it fell through. English translator Ted Woosley, and this you'll hear this quote everywhere, explained in 1994 during an interview, Final Fantasy V is just not accessible enough for the average gamer. That's what he says, and that was his explanation as to why it was never translated from English, at least in 1994.
So they didn't think it was worth it?
I guess not, unless they thought it was too complicated a game. That sounds like a Japanese thing to say, and that Ted Woosley is like, whatever.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like
That's bullshit.
It's too Japanese. They can't understand.
Yeah, it's
Which is something I've heard before.
It's a real stuck-up cultural thing. Believe me, we have much deeper stories.
That's not. I don't know.
We can.
I can't.
You know what? No.
I can't have an opinion on that.
Konami can even have much better stories, and theirs actually come out in the States every time. It's because they realize, you know what? People like Metal Gear Solid, so we're going to sell Metal Gear Solid.
You know, it's funny. Metal Gear Solid is like about American people.
It is. That's true. Well, look at a lot of these characters. Not all of them are Japanese. That's like true. Vaughn and those guys, they're not Japanese. The Titus, there's no way.
You mean the look?
Yeah, the look of them.
I think Titus looks very Japanese in the underwater makeout scene.
That's
he
true.
Looks very
he has
Japanese.
Like darker. He has like different skin. It like changes for that scene.
Well, yeah.
His eyes
get
a
different
little
character model.
Yeah, it's true.
Completely.
Well, and Auron, I think, is Japanese looking.
There were other attempts to localize the game, of course. Final Fantasy Extreme, which we've all heard the rumors about, that fell through, along with a failed Windows port from Eidos Interactive and then another port from Top Dog Software. Those all fell through before 1999.
And now they own Eidos.
Yeah, now they do. They might as well have just, yeah.
They haven't really done much with it since then.
And because of all these failed fan translations, or not fan translations, excuse me, I'm getting ahead here. Because of all these failed official translations, it was one of the first games to be fully fan translated.
Oh yeah.
In the States. And in fact, that fan translation version is the version I've played first. Now, I've never finished the game before, but I did play a big chunk before, when I was, I don't know how many years ago it was, like 6-7 years ago. And so there's like character names and stuff that I'm used to from the fan translated version, like not Bart's. Bart's is not the main character's name in my head because I've heard Butts already.
Yeah.
Which is a horrible name.
Yeah.
And honestly, when I first played the fan translation, I saw the name Butts and I laughed pretty hard. I just thought it was ridiculous.
Yeah, it's pretty ridiculous.
There has been, of course, a lot of criticism on the translation that was in the anthology version that we played. Mostly the Pirate Ferris voice, which was not part of the original Japanese dialogue, nor was it part of the fan translation.
Oh, really?
Yeah, really. You're going, oh, really? Because we're used to the pirate voice on Ferris, right?
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
That's not actually how she's supposed to sound. Of course, to us, it's okay because fuck, she's a pirate. And that's like the stereotypical pirate voice.
Yeah,
unless it's Captain Phillips we're talking about here.
Yeah.
But like, like the Pirates of the Caribbean kind of pirate voice.
Yeah, the yar, matey.
Right. So
yar, what?
I can understand the decision making going behind making her a piratey voice, especially since she's supposed to be boyish at the beginning, and that would be a way to cover up her femininity.
Yeah.
Right.
Sorry, it's a bullshit word. I just enjoy how very stereotypical they are about people that are outside of their own culture. Have you noticed that? Like Barrett? Barrett's
Barrett.
Mr. T.
Barrett's pretty racist interpretation of a black man.
Barrett is like the epitome.
I'd say they treat Saz a lot better than Barrett.
Sort of, yeah. He's a crappier character, but yeah, I guess they treat him better.
Yeah, and
they had seen black people by the time 13 came out, so...
Japan, I think they're 99% Japanese.
Jeez.
Yeah, and we're like, in the States, we're like 50% white and then 50% other minorities.
Oh, yeah.
And I think the biggest chunk of that, of course, is Hispanic and then African-American.
Right.
Right. So, I don't know.
It's understandable to an extent, but it's kind of funny how they do that, but then they're like, oh, you wouldn't understand with some of these...
You wouldn't understand
with these translations,
Japanese,
which is Japanese for, we were just lazy.
It's Japanese for we don't have enough money for an English translation.
Yeah. Which is madness, but...
Yeah, whatever, man. So, another Japanese thing we're going to talk about here. The original Japanese script didn't use kanji at all.
Really?
Which means I can fucking read it.
Nice. So it was
to save space, apparently. There wasn't enough room for the kanji. So it's all in hiragana and katakana.
Nice.
And so, that's very interesting. Apparently they did that for 4 also. And then, of course, later they came out with the Game Boy Advanced version of this game, and it's the iOS and Android version are basically the same as the Game Boy Advance one, except it's graphically updated, and there's some glitches that were fixed, I guess. But
Bastards.
The Game Boy Advance version, and we have no experience with any of these, but it sounds cool. Has 4 new jobs, a bestiary, a quick save, which would have been nice, a music player, and a new dungeon.
Nice.
Yeah, seriously nice.
I kind of like the bestiaries.
You like the bestiaries?
Yeah. It's kind of cool to look back and be like, oh, yeah, I remember destroying that guy.
Anyway, we've talked about this before. Like, Final Fantasy V is one of the Final Fantasy games that gets talked about the least. Do you agree?
Yeah, or at least the least positively. But yeah, no one ever really talks about 5. Plenty of people love 4 and 6 and 7 and 10 and, whatever, but I honestly never hear anything about 5.
I feel like it's because 5 was released later. In fact, I don't just feel that way. That's probably the reason.
You think so?
Yeah. It was released on the anthology, and the big game on the anthology was 6. So 5 would have been eclipsed by 6, if not in anything by popularity of 6, which was, of course, originally 3, which was a big game.
Right.
Here and elsewhere. 4 is kind of the same way. 4 was originally 2. So 4 is looked upon a lot more than, like, say, 3 or the actual 2.
Yeah.
Well, or the actual 3 or the actual 2. Or
yeah. That's retarded, all of that. But, yeah, I feel like that's a lot of it. And then you can kind of see them knowing that that's the case when they throw in these cutscenes that are CG that, well, I don't know if I'd say CG. Yeah, it's probably CG. It's really cheap.
It's computer generated.
Yeah, really, really bad CG, but the stuff that you would expect from 7 and maybe, no, not 8. 8 looks really good. Some of the later ones that gained a lot of fans of the series, I think that's the reason why they threw these little videos into 5 and 4, is because, you know, people will see that intro video and be like, oh, cool, it's like 7.
Right. Yeah, that's exactly what the thing, and that's honestly what I thought. When I first got the anthology, I don't know how many years ago, I picked up Final Fantasy VI, and I saw the FMVs, and I was like, cool. Because I really loved that about 8. And I had originally played 8. 7 at the time was like $50 to $100 to get a hold of. Because it was before it was released on the PlayStation Network. So, like, you know, it's that kind of a thing that it connects newer players of the game.
Yeah, to some of the older games.
To some of the older games. Not necessary if you're an older human being.
Yeah.
But it's still an interesting way for them to have tried to connect the two, especially, and I've said this before, there are 3 big Final Fantasy eras. There's 1 through 6, there's 7 through 9, and then there's 10 through where we are now. I feel like they were trying to connect the PlayStation era with the two-dimensional era of 1 through 6. Because, you know, the PlayStation era is the golden age, at least in terms of sales.
Yeah.
As far as these games go. So, anyway, so we have some opinions from Reddit here. I went on Reddit last night, and, you know, I just kind of wanted to know what other people felt about the game before we go into our, like, official, like, review. You know what I mean? So here's a big review from this guy named Evil Anagram. It says, Final Fantasy V is a fantastic adventure. It's reminiscent of pulp fantasy novels with all the pirates riding dragons and taking part in larger scale battles. It also gets back to the roots of Final Fantasy with its D&D inspired job system, which is just so much fun. The customization options are limitless, and the adventure is in many ways a fun romp through fantasy worlds that doesn't have quite as much melodrama as, say, Final Fantasy VII. Story-wise, a lot of people give it flack for not being as story-driven as the others. To an extent, they have a point. It's more focused on the fun of the adventure, and it rarely dips into more dramatic scenes. However, that isn't to say that it doesn't dip into dramatic scenes, I think is what he's saying. The game is fantastic at providing something comforting to the players and taking it away Josh Whedon style. And then he goes on to say that he really loves Exdeath. He says Exdeath is one of the truly great villains in Final Fantasy. Is what he says. And then the line here. And have you ever seen how freaking Neo Exdeath looks? God damn, son. He sprouts horns and pulls a rose pose from Titanic on top of a mountain, and spirit wolves and unicorn lions and skeletons and naked ladies. This is some freaky shit right there. That's what he stated. Man, he
really changed.
There was a negative review from Reddit, of course. I never could get into FF5, says Vincent Grayson. I've played through it several times, largely because the Super NES emulation is so quick and easy, but it's never quite grabbed me. I think that to some degree this is because I didn't play it until long after it was contemporary, which we were talking about, you know, that issue, which is probably true for most of us. By the time I had access to it, back when the fan translation first came out, I'd already played later entries that had far more refined versions of the job system, Final Fantasy Tactics in particular. And the story world characters just never really clicked with me. It's not a bad game or even a bad FF game, but it's definitely towards the bottom of my list in terms of which ones I enjoyed the most. Now, I know most of the people who replied to this Reddit request liked the game, except for that guy, really.
Yeah.
And so, which is interesting. Usually when I see like lists, like, I don't know, like a fucking game trailers list where they're like, Final Fantasy worst and best, you know what I mean? Final Fantasy V is usually considered one of the worst Final Fantasy games. Why do you think that is?
I feel like it's just the expectation you go into the game with. I mean, when you look at 1 through 4, or, well, 1 through 3, there's not that much there. So I don't understand how 5 is considered worse than any of those on any fucking list anywhere, because it's a better game. The one thing 3 had going for it, the new job system, was completely eclipsed by the job system in 5, which was way better.
Way better.
And there's a story in 5. It's not a great story necessarily, but it's kind of better than 4's story in a lot of ways, and 4 is loved.
You're gonna get so much crap for that. People love Final Fantasy IV.
Oh, I know they do.
And here's the thing. I do agree that the story is better than 4's, but only up from a certain point. I feel like 4's first half was stronger than 5's first half.
Oh, yeah.
But 5's second half was stronger than 4's second half.
The ending of Final Fantasy V is the best ending that I've seen in the game so far.
In the game so far is in 1 through 5.
Oh, yeah, 1 through 5.
Okay. I guess it's time to get to the story right now. In Final Fantasy, now we're just going to compare it to Final Fantasy IV for the second here. Final Fantasy IV, of course, there was the scene where he had to fight himself, and become a paladin, which, very powerful scene.
Of course.
At the beginning of the game.
Right.
Right. Then there were a bunch of sacrifices, which were in themselves pretty powerful. It was a little repeaty and a lot like Final Fantasy II.
Yeah. Although the scene with Edge fighting his parents, that was also powerful
a really
scene too,
right.
and that wasn't
a
bullshit
thing.
thing.
Yeah, you're right. You're right about that scene. I forgot about that scene briefly. And then of course there's the Galoof sacrifice, and then the sacrifices stop, and then in the second half of the game, you find out that the sacrifices were not really sacrifices for most of them.
Yeah, everyone that you thought had sacrificed themselves to that point were all alive.
Except for Fusoya.
Fusoya was later.
Was it later?
Yeah, it was after, because Sid was alive in the hospital, and then, what's the monk guy? I can't remember his name. He was alive too. You see him on the ship, and you're like, what the fuck? You were dead, man. And then the twins come back.
Right.
I think the twins come back later, though.
The twins do come back later. It's like at the end of the game.
Yeah.
They reveal that the twins had...
They're like, oh, guess what?
The elder had, like, softened them, even though...
Which is retarded, because
Soya couldn't.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous. I feel like, because of that twist. Because of the twist, and I guess it's a positive twist.
Yeah.
Where the characters you thought were dead weren't actually dead. Because of that twist, I feel like 4 weakens itself in the story department.
Yeah.
Certainly the character of Cecil's very interesting, and him going from darkness to light is very powerful. That part of the story is very powerful.
And then the stuff with Cain, I liked.
Yeah, the stuff with Cain, and then of course you were talking about Edge's sacrifice, and Fusoya's sacrifice is very powerful stuff.
Yeah.
Sid and Yang. And the kids,
Yang.
Those powerful scenes are just taken away.
Yeah, it
and
destroys the value.
They're meant to be, they go to meaninglessness. So although I do enjoy very much the story of 4, and I can see why people love it, I do think 5's is better.
Yeah.
And now 5 has a flat main character. His name is Bartz or Butts. I might slip into Butts every once in a while.
Or Husk.
Or Husk in your case. He's a little flat, and the game certainly in the beginning is very, the guy said it focused on adventure.
Yeah.
Right? There's dragons, and then there's crystals and whatever that we've seen before in the stuff. But it might just be the dragons and the castles and everything that make the game feel different.
Maybe.
very adventure. You got this kooky old guy who lost his memory and you don't know what's going on. But then as soon as X-Death really shows up after the crystals are all shattered.
Which takes a while.
And
I was
then
surprised
King
how
Tycoon dies after the Earth Crystal, of course, gets broken apart. And then they go to the... Galoof goes back to his world, and then the others decide to follow him. That's when the game in Final Fantasy V, it takes like half the game to get there.
Oh yeah.
It's when the game Final Fantasy V really the story starts to be meaningful, because they have gone from the beginning of the game, it was just an adventure. Almost. I mean, they were trying to save the crystals, but it was like, hey, we're gonna go save the crystals kind of a thing.
Yeah. They didn't realize the full problem.
Yeah.
The scale of the situation.
Crystals.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe as an audience member, we're supposed to care more about the crystals breaking, but we've seen it 4 times in previous games.
Yeah, so I don't give a shit. Plus they give you jobs, so I mean,
But when they like finally, the quintessential moment is when they decide that they are going to become heroes, and that it's not just Galoof's job to save the world. When they decide that's when the game picks up, as far as its story is concerned. And, of course, that's when X-Death becomes a bigger threat, or when X-Death is released. That's also what.
Yeah, I mean, the first chunk of the game, like you were saying, it is very adventure-y. There is no point almost. You're trying to find out what's going on with the crystals, but that's about it.
Right.
You don't see the enemy for a while.
When we first started playing the game, I mentioned to you, I was like, hey, X-Death is really like, he's not doing anything. He's just there. Like, and so I felt like there was nothing driving the story, which I feel like is probably where most of the criticism comes from. That first half of the story.
Yeah, I could see that.
The second half of the story, though, and I want to especially say probably one of the most powerful moments in any Final Fantasy, Galoof's sacrifice, when he tries to save his granddaughter and everybody when they're in the Elder Tree.
Yeah.
And they broke the seals to X-Death, and then he, fights X-Death, and of course he dies from it. That scene is very powerful. In fact, I was just kind of like playing the game, and then that part happened, and like, I just, like, my view of the game completely changed. I was like, holy shit.
Yeah, it was crazy.
That part of that game it's beautiful, honestly. And it's got heightened emotions, and it's really dramatic. I don't know. I just fucking love it. And then, of course, and I say that scene, and then the part where you meet Gilgamesh later, and he's like lost in the interdimensional rift.
Yeah.
That scene was also pretty powerful to me, I'd say.
Yeah.
Just because, I felt like it was a cool storytelling aspect of it. Definitely. And I did care about the characters. I mean, when Kryle or Kryle, I'm not sure how to pronounce her.
Kryle.
It's Kororo. No, what was it? Kururu?
Kururu, yeah.
It was Kururu in Japanese. Not Kororo. Kururu. When she was alone, I actually felt bad for her.
Yeah.
I certainly felt more attached to the characters by the end of the game, than I did feel attached to the characters in Final Fantasy IV.
Yeah.
I mean, how did you feel about all this?
I felt like the female characters in 5 were stronger. I mean, sure, the pirate voice was really dumb for the most part. It's just like when her sister, like, turned over when they were sleeping in that one inn in that scene. She's like, "You awake?" Which, obviously I was like, oh god, a sex scene. Because I'm always joking about that. But, she says that, and then she's like, "Yeah, what?" And I just, like, started laughing. I'm like, what is this? This is ridiculous. But at least she has an identity, as opposed to basically all the female characters up to this point are nothing. They don't matter. I don't remember their names because
Rosa?
They're flat.
You don't remember Rosa?
I remember Rosa. Rosa had a little bit of a character, but even then, it's not. They're not very strong. These are very patriarchal games up to this point, and I think 5 kind of started changing
They
that.
stay that way.
No, 7. There's some
10, I think, has the strongest female characters.
Yuna.
Yeah, Yuna is a very strong.
Yeah, and then
female
they came
character.
out with 10-2, and they completely changed the character.
Yeah, that's a problem. I agree with
But
that.
I mean, we'll just consider 10-2 a lie and a disgrace to.
We have to play it.
We do. Oh God.
All the way through.
Oh God. 100%.
No, I'm not gonna 100%.
Okay.
I'm just gonna beat it.
But yeah, I feel like the characters are starting to pick up. I mean, the female characters at the very least. And I agree with what you said about in the beginning the characters were kind of crappy. Galoof was cool for when he showed up.
Of course, the kooky old man characters. He's basically based on Fusoya. But he's a cool guy.
Yeah.
He's cool.
He didn't have any epic lines like you spoony bard.
No, he didn't have any lines.
That was
like
pretty
that.
sweet. Or the what was it, like hanky panky or something that he said to him later in my version. But still a good character. But I feel like the reason why they make the main character in games, I know this is true, kind of flat, is because then you can kind of relate him to yourself a little more.
Right, you can project yourself onto that character.
But it's, I don't know, it doesn't translate
It might work for
as well.
games, it doesn't work for movies, though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know, even games it doesn't work for necessarily. That's a lot of times why video games will have characters that are mutes, is because then you can really put yourself into their shoes because they don't speak.
Like Link.
Yeah, like Link, or like the main character in Grand Theft Auto 3, he never says anything.
Really?
Yeah, he doesn't
I didn't know
speak, which is weird, but it's for that reason. It's so that you don't have some weird, voice, Ray Liotta.
I'd say make him relatable, but I wouldn't make him flat.
Yeah.
Right. Well, I'm sorry, were you about to do a Goodfellas thing?
Oh, no, Ray Liotta played the main character in Grand Theft Auto Vice City.
Fuck you.
So.
I was like, let's talk about Goodfellas.
No.
Goodfellas is great.
It is, but we can't talk about that right now. So yeah, I feel like the characters definitely took it took a huge, like a 180 almost. They found their purpose. They decided that, look, this is something we have to do, save the world, and they got more interesting.
How do you feel about the bad guy, X-Death?
He's pretty intense, honestly. I don't like him as much as I liked, what was it? What was the guy's name from the last one? Golbez.
I keep thinking Zandy. Dude, every fucking Final Fantasy bad guy is gonna be named Zandy.
They all look like Zandy, but Zandy was a puss. Like,
true.
Zandy just got dominated.
Yeah, on the fight with Zandy.
Yeah, he's like, ha, I'm Zandy! And then you just fucking destroy him. And you're like, well, yeah, we shouldn't have trained for so long.
If that's all you were going for.
Yeah, but then
darkness
it was not cool, yeah.
Which is ridiculous.
I know, they all kind of look like Zandy, though. Like, the armor's
They do,
black, spiky.
right.
They're like some death metal dude.
Right, and on the next game, and you'll see this, the bad guy is much different.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, Kefka is completely insane.
Right, and that's kind of that's how I feel about X-Death. I mean, the fact that he's willing to erase everything in existence, even himself, is pretty crazy.
Yeah, he's nuts.
But I would say Golbez is a stronger bad guy.
Right. I felt like I didn't feel X-Death's presence until like the end.
Right, and
5.
Golbez was taking over a guy. Oh no.
Yeah, it was.
No, there was
someone was taking over Golbez. Can't remember.
Yeah,
the name.
yeah. What was that guy's name? Anyway, that guy, the real bad guy in 4, is way more badass than the bad guy in 5 because he wasn't even awake and he was taking over a guy who was taking over another guy to do his bidding. And X-Death, someone was doing his bidding. The possessed guys.
Yeah, he would possess people and like destroy the crystals.
Right, but I mean, to possess a man to then possess another's possessionception or whatever we called it, mind controlception.
Mindception.
Yeah.
Mindception. That's what we called it on our Final Fantasy 4 review.
So that makes him, I think, a more badass end boss. But I don't know, what do you think?
Well, I think you're right in a lot of ways. I don't think Golbez. I'm just gonna say Golbez was the bad guy of Final Fantasy IV because he was for like 99% of it. I don't think Golbez was that strong of a bad guy. Well, excuse me. Maybe I'm letting my opinions get in the way of this. My my thoughts on Golbez is because I know that he's a puppet. He's not that strong of a bad guy.
Right.
The guy who, of course, controls him didn't seem too terribly. He wasn't that much in the game, which I think is a problem with 4. Is the bad guy switches.
Yeah, and
and so I feel like that bad guy's not that strong, and 5's bad guy isn't that strong either.
Because he's not there. Yeah,
he's not there till like halfway through the game. Of course, we talked about, and then even then, he doesn't seem that malicious to you specifically. Do you feel that way?
In a lot of ways, he kind of lets you live. He sicks Gilgamesh on you, which I don't know why. Yeah, he's like
kill him like no other.
He's like a gimp.
Yeah. I don't think either bad guy's that strong. I think X-Death has my vote for being stronger than Final Fantasy IV's ultimate antagonist.
Yeah,
but other than that, I felt like the end boss was certainly very fucking hard.
Oh yeah.
So do you have anything else to say about the story, as far as your opinions on the story?
I liked it. I think it's a very underrated game.
I think the story was underrated.
I think so. I mean,
I feel like if it's not the same strength as 4, it's a little stronger.
Yeah, like you said.
I mean, there's certainly a sentimentality with 4 that 5 doesn't have here in the States.
Right, because of the release
And so
issues.
when people like look back on Final Fantasy games, they're probably going to remember 4 a lot better. They probably played 4 like 6 times, and
right, because they didn't have 5.
They didn't have 5, and 4's older. It's more in our culture.
Yeah,
our Final Fantasy fan culture has a lot more 4 in it than it does 5. So
yeah,
I think that's probably a big part of it.
Yeah, I don't think it actually has anything to do with which one's a better game necessarily. I mean, I kind of like in 4 how there's no job classes. We'll get to that, but I don't know. I just like that better in a game. It's less.
Okay, so the look of the game. Let's go through some minor stuff here. What'd you think of the look of the game?
As I said before, I mean, it looked alright. The graphics were about the same as 4, which is, as you said, surprising. Normally they get better. 6 looks way better than 5.
Right.
Like, it's pretty good, actually, when I'm looking at the beginning little cutscene thing and the in-game graphics. It's a nice treat for me. But, I don't know, I feel like like we said, the colors, the
color palette is very muted.
Yeah, it's not
my thoughts on the graphics were, and the best way I can sum it up is if you've ever seen the movie Heavy Metal, which I watched in the middle of Final Fantasy V. When I watched Heavy Metal, which is a horrible movie, I noticed that the color palette, just the look of it was very similar to what I was experiencing in Final Fantasy V, I felt.
Yeah.
Like, it was a real 80s, I know this is a 1992 game, but it feels like a really 80s fantasy world.
Right.
Kind of a thing. 4 feels that way a little bit, but it still has more of a, I don't know, a fantastical anime kind of a feel going towards it. Whilst this one feels a little bit more Western, honestly.
Yeah.
Do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah, I can see what you're saying.
Maybe it's just the dragons and the colors.
What they think of
Western fantasy.
Yeah, Western shit.
But I don't know. I don't know how much of that can be really based in anything. But that's the feel I got from the game. Just the muted colors. I thought the game wasn't that good looking of a game.
Yeah.
The Mode 7 effects when like you're in the airship or whatever were cool, and the meteorite, whatever. Those were big effects, and I don't think 4 had as much of that in your version.
Yeah. And then the cutscenes of the meteorites and stuff coming down, those were cool.
Yeah, those were cool.
They didn't look fantastic, but I mean, it's old game. So.
Right. And they use more of, it's called Mode 7. They use more of that in Final Fantasy 6 also.
Yeah.
And in 5 they were definitely playing with it more than they were in 4. But yeah. The look of the game wasn't that spectacular to me. 4 looked a lot better for me because I played the advanced version of 4.
Yeah, it looks good.
Which looks fucking amazing. And I'm sure the like updated graphical version of 5 on the Android and the iOS look great. But that's not the version we played.
No.
We played something that's very close to the
Although
original.
Christian's playing that one, so maybe
Is
I'll
he
have to
playing
take a
that
look
one?
at it. Yeah, he's got it on his Kindle.
Oh, okay. Is he
Or-
is he done with that?
He's in the final area also. He got dominated by the area
Did he?
monsters. Yeah, he said they were just destroying him over and over again.
All right. So the next section is music. What'd you think of the music in this one?
I don't know. There were a few pieces that I thought were good, but the rest of it is just kind of generic.
It's hard to talk about music on a podcast without being able to play the music.
Yeah.
And that's the problem. This is, of course, done by Nobuo Uematsu. And honestly, my opinions with video game music are, if they're not distracting and they're not bad, they're probably pretty good.
Yeah.
Do you agree with that opinion?
Yeah. And, you know, the music for the final area and X-Death,
Yeah, that was cool.
it reminds me a lot of, the music that plays when Sephiroth is around. Yeah, that, and then, well, it's the other one that's like, da-na-na.
Yeah, right.
It reminds me a lot of that. It's not as powerful because they haven't been, they're not as advanced with what they can do with the music because of space
They don't have
issues.
as many tracks. And also, it's Nobuo Uematsu. A lot of his tracks, as you go through the game, sound very similar to each other.
Yeah.
And it's almost like he's improving them as he goes.
Oh, I would agree, yes.
That's a problem with a lot of composers that they, it all comes from the same head and the same influence.
Yeah.
You get a similar sound every time.
Right.
Certainly a lot of John Williams music sounds very similar to each
True.
other.
But he's a lot better than, what's that fucking...
Hans Zimmer?
Hans Zimmer, yes. Jeez. Yeah.
Hans Zimmer had different sounding soundtracks in the 90s.
But not in the
now
2000s.
now he's stuck with the single note.
Like, what was it? The Gladiator?
Like that kind of sound.
Yeah, the Gladiator soundtrack and the
Pirates of the Caribbean.
Look this up, man. It is the same. There's like hardly anything different. And I don't remember
hey,
that.
that's Pirates. No, it's Gladiator.
I don't remember that in Gladiator at all.
It's the beginning battle scene.
I don't remember that song. I only remember it from Pirates.
Ah.
So like when I was watching the video, I thought that one was the Pirates one, and I was like,
what? And then it changed.
yeah, and then I was like, oh, what the fuck?
Well, the Pirates one is a faster tempo.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's.
You know what's funny? Okay, I know we're going off topic here. We gotta get back to Final Fantasy V in a second. But about that soundtrack, the Pirates of the Caribbean soundtrack, the composer for the first Pirates of the Caribbean is somebody else. It is not Hans Zimmer.
Are you serious?
And he got an Oscar nom for it. Now, this has all been very hush-hush. There's been no word about this whatsoever, but because I know those soundtracks are exactly the same, it's funny how Hans Zimmer came and did the soundtracks for the second and third Pirates of the Caribbean. Don't you think that's interesting?
Yeah, that's kind of weird.
It's like he's like, well, this other composer stole my music. Tell you what, I won't sue you if you just hire me for the second two Pirates movies.
Yeah. That's a good point. Yeah, that's weird. I thought it was...
No, it's not the same guy.
Huh.
Like, seriously, you can look it up right now. It's like, Hans Zimmer is the Gladiator and Hans Zimmer is Pirates 2 and 3. Hans Zimmer is not Pirates 1. And that one theme is taken from Gladiator.
Oh, yeah.
Like, almost note for note. It's disturbingly similar.
Yeah, it was just random.
Anyway, so back to the game. Let's talk about the gameplay. Our favorite aspect of this game, I do believe.
Yeah.
You were talking about the job system of 3?
Yeah, I feel like the job system in 5 advanced a lot of the aspects that the job system of 3 had in it. You know, because in 3, you would get the abilities of that class, right? But in 5, you can switch to another class, and if you've leveled up the other class up to a certain point, I mean, like level 2 or so, you can actually equip the ability to use that other class's moves to that certain level that you've leveled up. Yeah, it is really nice.
And I hated 3's job system because of the switching of the job system that had to be done so often.
Yeah.
And the fact that if you didn't know that job very well, like, you wouldn't be able to switch very quickly. Especially in the 3 remake that we played where enemies aren't around as much, right?
Right.
It takes a while to like get through 10 battles because you can walk quite far and not hit a battle.
Yeah, you can.
The encounter rate is super low in Final Fantasy III's remake. And that was a big issue with Final Fantasy 3. With Final Fantasy 5, that's not there at all. You can switch the parties whenever you want, and there's even more customization involved with doing exactly what you just said, which was you can, if once you learn a certain class to certain levels of that class, you can take that ability and put it on another guy.
Yeah, and I mean the game doesn't focus nearly as heavily on certain classes for certain areas as it did in 3. You know, like the Dragoon in 3 was godly in that one tower where there was a bunch of flying monsters, the dragons and stuff. But then after that, it just fell off.
Yeah,
there's no reason.
Me and you disagree on this. You said you liked how 4 didn't have job classes. Personally, and I thought I was gonna feel this way when we started 5. Personally, I feel like the jobs, I feel like this is the best Final Fantasy so far in terms of gameplay that we've played. I just had so much fun with the job system and the customization. I've never had that kind of fun in one of these older Final Fantasies ever.
Yeah.
I mean, 13 has a fun battle system, but you know, the other games where I felt like the battle system was always a chore for me. This game, the customization of it, and the fact that I could just go in front of a boss and be like, okay, well, you're weak to lightning, so I'm going to make them all black mages. The fact that I can do that kind of shit is a lot of fun to me. I don't know.
Yeah, I did enjoy that. I mean, as far as job systems go, this one's easily the strongest. I know that reviewer talked about tactics.
Which we haven't played.
Well, I have.
You have?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that. I've never played tactics.
And it's a good job system. It's very good.
Is it better than 5?
I think so.
You think so?
It's different though. I don't remember. I think you can use kind of like in 5 where you can use another class's jobs if you've leveled it up enough. So it's very in depth.
Right.
But so far 5's I agree with you. The leveling up wasn't as much of a chore. I mean, obviously it's going to...
There's hardly any leveling in Final Fantasy 5. You notice we both beat the game in the 30s?
Yeah, that's
which
really
is
low.
Super low for a Final Fantasy. I don't know if the max is... I doubt the max is... I think the max is still level 99 for these games.
That's sick.
But I think it's the customization of the parties that makes the game just easier.
Yeah, we did some cheap shit.
As far as that goes. Did you do any side quests?
I did. I went into the... What was it? The Tower of the Phoenix, and I got the Phoenix summon.
Nothing like walking up 30 floors.
Holy shit. I thought you said 20, and then when it kept going up and up, I was like, fuck, how many floors are there? God, these
Just
enemies.
Call me, I'm like, it's 80. It's 80 floors, Kayla. Didn't I tell you that?
Fuck! This place is hell! Well, it was sick, too, because I went and got
there's no
Bahamut.
saves, and there's a lot of enemies, and you can't
yeah.
run away from any of them.
No, you can't, and they're brutal. And the magic pot things, they're a joke, man.
Yeah, they're not like 7 where you can get a shitload of AP off of them.
No, and I mean, I gave him an elixir and still nothing.
Really?
Yeah, so I was pissed, and I just ran away. I was like, screw you! He's like, elixir.
That is, honestly, I got most of my elixirs in that area, but I also used a shitload of elixirs in that area.
You have to, it's sick. But,
yeah, 30 floors for the Phoenix
summon,
which is a useful summon. Honestly.
Oh, yeah, I didn't use it until the final boss, because I did these things right before the end, and it was helpful.
Right.
And then what was funny is I grabbed Bahamut before that, which he did kill me once, because he cast Mega Flare, and then the second time I used Carbuncle, and the Mega Flare reflected and dominated him. It did 10,000 damage to him, and he just wasted away. And so I was like, oh, I'll go to this tower down here and see what's in here, and then it was way worse. Like, the enemies around Bahamut, nothing. Just weak as hell.
I hated getting poisoned through that area. Whenever you step on those, like, flower things.
I never stepped on one. I was very careful because I knew.
Fucking, as soon as I stepped on one, I started being careful, but before then, they're rough flowers.
Well, and the poison in that game is rough, man. Like, every step, it's like
200.
Yeah, it's a lot. And normally, before, it was like 10.
Right.
In a lot of the other games.
Right. The other games aren't nearly as brutal when it comes to the poison.
So I did that, and then I collected one of the books, and I got 3 of the weapons, and then all the other weapons weren't very enticing.
No.
I mean, some of the swords, maybe the lance, but I didn't go into the bow this time. I did the bow in 2, which was godly, to be honest. Like, when I had it on what was the chick in 2? One of the chicks. It was Maria. I had it on Maria, and she was doing some hefty damage for a lot of the game. Near the end, it kind of fell off a little, but she was mostly a caster. But this time I didn't venture into that, and like the bells and shit. I was like, I'm not gonna do that.
Well, there's so much customization with this game that those who are like enjoy exploring games and getting everything, I think they'll be real well rewarded with, like, say, weapons like that, the ultimate weapons in the game.
Yeah, they're probably good.
You know, you can go about and get those, and if you've been working on parties that can utilize them, then that'd be rewarding to them.
Right.
Definitely. And I did everything in this game. I never have to revisit this game. Now, I say everything. I did not level up every class high all the way, and I didn't level up to 99. But I mean everything. I did all the side quests. And all the side quests I was able to do in the third world anyway. Because I know there's some smaller side quests in the first and second world.
Yeah, that you can't do later.
In Bartz's world and in Galoof's world. But in the third world, I did everything. I got Bahamut. I got the Mime class, which I used. And I'll talk about that in a second. I of course, got Phoenix like you did. Mm-hmm. And then I went and got, like, I ran around the world with the Chocobo.
Oh, yeah. You had to do that to get Bahamut and Phoenix.
Did you?
Yeah, you couldn't land your airship. You had to land your Black Chocobo in that little woods area.
Right.
And that's how you could get to those two dungeons.
Is that how you get the Black Chocobos, by doing that?
By running around the world, yeah.
Really? Well, I just did it. I didn't know they were connected.
Yeah. And then you go back into the Mirage Village, and the guy's gone, and the Black Chocobo's running around.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
I did not fucking know that.
Yeah,
anyway,
because he says something like, "But you can't run around the world on a Chocobo," and I was like, "I wonder what I'm gonna."
I got all the weapons. I got Leviathan.
You got all the weapons?
Yeah, I got all the weapons. So I got all the scrolls and everything.
I tried to do it legitimately, not looking up anything for the scrolls.
I looked up my way through that part. I told myself, I'm like, I don't want to have to revisit this game again. Because I know I'm going to have to revisit the older ones at some point. We talked about this in our side quest episode, which was last week.
Right.
But this game, I don't feel like I need to revisit it, except to enjoy it.
Yeah.
That's the only reason I would revisit this game again, is because I felt it was a good game.
Yeah, and I mean, we could do a lot of fun stuff with some of these other parties that we didn't try out.
Right.
I'm sure.
Right. And like there seems to be there seems to be a lot of reward for people who like get the bard or the chemist maybe isn't completely useless after level 2.
Yeah.
Things like that. People can definitely explore. I never feel like that's completing the game. I don't feel like.
Yeah, it's just kind of not necessary. We have a lot of games. I have a lot of games that I own, so I'm not going to spend that much time on one. I feel like the others are getting neglected.
Admittedly, it took me maybe... Well, I didn't notice that. I didn't know you only got 3 of the weapons. You must have gotten the 3 you have to get.
I did.
Yeah.
I got the 3 that I knew I needed.
Fuck. I feel like... I got those. It may maybe have taken me 4 hours to do everything else that you don't have to do in the game, which is a really low amount of time. I've seen your 7 and 12 save files. They're disgusting.
Yeah, they're hefty.
5s, though, I got everything in 25 hours. If I were to level up maybe for another 10 hours, I could probably get everybody to 99 and all that shit.
Maybe.
So I think you can do everything in Final Fantasy V in under 40 hours.
I would agree.
I'd say that's my guess, because I beat the game at just under 26 hours, and I did everything except for the leveling up.
Right. And I mean, I did end up beating, for once, which is awesome for me, I did end up beating the game faster than Joe, and which is,
for once in your life.
Yeah, and right, he's right, he did get the extra stuff, but I think we were at a certain point, and I was about 2.5 hours ahead of him, so I think I still could have, but...
I don't know how you did that. Honestly, I feel like I was hauling ass in that game.
I just had this weird intuition that every time I couldn't figure out where to go, I would just go find Sid. I was like, all right, I'm just going to go find this Sid and Mid guys and find out where the shit to go. And it worked.
They'll know exactly where to go.
Yeah.
Right.
That cut down on time. And then I don't know what else. I was really surprised when I asked Caleb what yours was at, and he's like, oh, he's at 21. And I was like, what? What is he doing?
Well,
but yeah, that's it. Like you said, that is nothing time-wise compared to 7, 10. 10 is just ungodly.
The games get longer and longer as they go along.
Yeah.
Certainly, I think 5 took me 1 more hour than 4, I believe. And 4, by the way, 6 hours of that was just having the game on autopilot while I was asleep.
That's true. I think I might have beaten 4 faster, but it's because of that.
I think I might have beat Final Fantasy 4, not including the time that I was asleep. It would have been about 19 hours. But I think it ended up being 24 or something.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you kind of have to count that since you used it to kill the final boss.
Right.
So, I mean, we will never know. We may never know. It's like how many licks it takes to get to the center of a Tootsie Pop.
No, you can never know.
No, you can't.
Well, you could know if we replayed the games.
Well, we could, but I mean, then we're more experienced.
Here's what I liked about Final Fantasy V better than the other games. I felt like not only was the battle system better than the previous 4, but also the game was more balanced. I never got to a certain point where I was like, this is too much. Like in 4 or in 1, where you go from, let's say in 4, from the Earth to the Moon, or the underground to the moon.
Yeah, that is a huge
the difference in just the plain difficulty of the area enemies are disgusting.
Yeah, that is one giant step.
And one has a similar problem with your version of 1, at least, going from the outside world to inside the Temple of Chaos. Sick.
Yeah,
right?
It's intense.
I felt like 5 was just super even keeled. Like, once again, I ended the game. My guys were, I think, around level 36. I think I had 2 on level 36 and 2 on level 37. I mean, and you ended somewhere similar, right?
I think I had a couple on 38 and then some on 36.
Right.
So it was about the same.
Right. It was about the same, considering yours were less hours than me.
And I was still higher level. Yeah, that was weird, too. But that doesn't make any sense.
We're playing the same version of the game, too.
Yeah, there's random battles no matter what game you play.
And it's just a super low level, but it's not really a super low level when you're playing the game. It's still challenging.
Yeah, well,
there are parts that are challenging, and the last area is pretty darn challenging.
Yeah.
But I feel like it's very...
it leads up to it.
It leads up to it smoothly.
Yeah, it's not this rough fucking just...
It's not just
hammered.
like, oh yeah, you're having fun, and then fuck you. As soon as you like enter into the dark corridor, right?
Yeah, crazy.
So I feel like 5 is very balanced. I think it was a very well-crafted game. It is a very well-crafted game.
Right. I would agree with that. I feel like, we both talked about that while we were playing it. There was no brutal transition. And I feel like I don't know, man, the only reason... A few of the reasons why people would prefer 4 over this is obviously the nostalgia factor.
It's nostalgia, yeah.
And
the character of Cecil's change, I think, is a big part of that too.
Yeah,
that's a good story point.
Yeah, it is. Kind of like Darker Cecil more, but he didn't do as much damage though. That I will say, but which is weird. But the story in 5 was a little bit flatter for the first half, and I feel like that's probably that and the nostalgia thing. It didn't have the guys who grew up playing Final Fantasy playing this 5.
I think everybody's experience with 5 is just going back and revisiting it. Because that's all we can have in the States, at least.
Yeah.
Is that experience. We can only just go back and revisit.
But I mean, with us, we get
going in a row, though. 5.
Yeah, you'll see.
Yeah, 5 is, it feels like at least it was a step up for me. Overall, everything in mind, what is your ultimate opinion on the game, Caleb?
My ultimate opinion?
Yeah.
How so? I mean,
your Roger Ebert review of the game.
Well, I feel like it was probably the best one I've played so far. And that's kind of...
I'm surprised. I thought you were going to place 4 above it yesterday.
I was thinking about it until I watched the final scene in 5. And it was a lot better than the final scene in 4.
Yeah, the wedding scene in 4. Yeah. I didn't think that scene was that great either.
No, it wasn't very strong. And 5's was very strong. And the only reason that I don't want to is because of, you know, the scene with Edge and some of the other really hard scenes in 4. That almost put 4 over the top, but then
4 is definitely more dramatic for most of it.
Yeah, but then it all switches like we talked about,
Right.
and then it just seems like a fucking joke. And in 5, it's not a joke, except for my guy died in the final battle, and I know you didn't experience this,
Right, because all my guys were alive at the end.
yeah, but then like they all left, and my guy was like, "Oh, I don't have the strength," and they all returned to Earth, and I was like, "Wow, that's kind of deep." My guy's just dead. He couldn't make it back because I didn't Phoenix down him in time, but then he came back anyway. They said something like, "It's not your time to die," and they sent me back down to Earth. So that was kind of 4-esque, but I kind of liked that one as opposed to what happened in 4, where everyone's like, "Oh, hey, it's not even like a light transition."
Yeah, Yang's in the hospital or whatever.
Well, he wasn't even in the hospital. He was commanding a ship.
No,
Remember that?
I walked in on where he's lying in bed.
Oh, did you?
Yeah.
I found Sid, but I
That
didn't
might
find
be an
Yang.
extra thing.
I think it is.
Okay.
But yeah, he's just in the ship, and I was like, "What the fuck? What is this?" No, you pull over. This can wait. You know. So I would place 5 above 4, just slightly,
Right.
because of the gameplay and because of the storytelling near the end.
Right. The scene with Galoof is the one that echoes in my mind as like the most powerful scene in this game.
It's probably one of the most powerful scenes in Final Fantasy so far, because the one with Edge's parents is rough, but Edge is kind of a douche.
Did you ever just keep attacking his parents?
I did, yeah.
I think we talked about this on the Final
I was like, "Die! You're an obscene creation."
Without comparing it to 4, I think it's a very, very good, solid game. And I enjoyed the story very much, the second half at least. The first half I wasn't that interested. In the gameplay, it was just great. Great. I enjoyed the game.
Yeah.
4, the battle system was better than the previous 3.
Oh, yes.
But didn't enjoy it as much as in 5.
Yeah, and the reason why I bitch about the job system when I was done playing 4 is because 4 was a better game than 3.
Right.
The battle system was way better than 3's.
Right. Way
but
better
5's is enjoyable.
And 3's was better than 2. But 3's story wasn't as good as 2.
No, and that's why 3 is below.
Yeah. So I think our ranks are going to be the same. I'm going to rank. It's my favorite Final Fantasy so far out of the 5 we played in the row kind of thing. Final Fantasy 5 is at the top. Followed by Final Fantasy 4. Followed by Final Fantasy 2. Final Fantasy 3. And then the worst game, Final Fantasy 1.
I second that. And it is so tough because I did enjoy 4, but damn those fucking useless sacrifices. And then, another thing that bugged me about 4, which I complained about before, is just the ending overall. Like the praying scene, I was like, this just feels so out of balance. Like, what? This wasn't part of the game.
I had no problem with that part of the
game. It didn't have anything to do with the rest of the game. There was no center religion. They
do the same thing in 10 later. Of course, there's more religion.
Oh, no, I guess
there's
4,
more religious stuff in 10.
Well, 4 is Earth, so I forget that 4 is Earth, so that makes some sort of context. There is supposed to be some sort of god, right? So that's probably what bugged me, is I keep forgetting that it's actually supposed to be the planet we live on, so that makes it make more sense.
I do like how 5 was in a different place.
I do.
I didn't
like that.
Finding out that 4 took place on Earth, I was like, what?
Yeah,
that seems so un-Final Fantasy-like, and it's one of the things that Spirits Within is just like, why is this on Earth?
Yeah, that's just weird.
Of course, 7 was supposed to be in New York City during the 90s. So,
oh, God.
Whatever. You know...
I'm really glad that guy came in and was like, no.
So, what was your final party, Caleb?
I had Krele as a ninja with, obviously, Gil Toss. And honestly, the ninja class was godly. There was this, first draw attack, or F draw, that would rout the enemy, is what its description was, and it had a chance to just kill outright.
Right.
And that sandworm, that freaky thing that comes out of the sand in certain areas.
That you can't escape from?
Yeah, I killed him in one hit. I didn't actually ever touch him outside of that attack. It's not 100%er, but yeah, that's part of the reason why I used it so much for that and the Gil Toss.
Right.
So I had her as a samurai. I had Bartz. Yeah, I'll call him Bartz. I had Bartz as a warrior, which I was kind of pissed off because I spent so much fucking time doing the ninja thing to get the dual wield. And then two-handed is better. Like, two-handed is better.
Two-handed is better. I was telling you that earlier
Well,
on.
I don't know if the blood sword could hit.
The blood sword never hit.
I never did a single attack with that
Neither
thing.
did I. It fucking never landed, so I stopped equipping it.
If that would have hit, I think it would have been
so
better.
awesome in 2.
I know, it was the godliest thing in the world when I used it in 2, but now, if I would have used that in my right or left hand and Excalibur in my right, I think it would have been better, but it just missed every time.
It just missed every time.
Yeah.
Dude, I had the same exact fucking problem.
And I spent so much time getting that ninja up to that level. I maxed that fucker to get that dual wield thing, and then just nothing. I just didn't even use it.
Right. So you had her on samurai or ninja. What was it?
She was samurai. Krele was samurai, and then I had Bartz on warrior.
With Giltoss.
With Giltoss, yes. I spent some time in the final area getting Giltoss for everybody. And then I had Reyna as chemist, which I'll explain why. And I had what was her name?
Ferris?
Yeah, Ferris. Wow. I had Ferris as black mage or summoner. I think I had summoner.
It was summoner with black mage all the way leveled up on her secondary.
Yeah.
Right. And I had actually a similar party. However, they were all mimes.
Yeah.
When I went and got the mime class, I had originally planned on beating the game because I had heard this was a cool trick, is that you could just have everybody mime the double cast of Bahamut and you'll win the game easily. The fact is, you'll only win that game easily if your summoner's all the way like leveled up and your guys are on a, decent level. Mine weren't at the end of the game. So actually, Bahamut only did, I think, it was like 2,500 to 3,000 every time. And so the double casting of that was just time consuming. It wasn't actually the godly attack that it was supposed to be. Which I wasn't happy about when I got there, but then I found out another trick. And, of course I told you this and you used it too. I actually beat the game the same way you did. I guilt-tossed the motherfucker to death. And here's what I did. I had the mime class. I leveled up, I think, 2 of them to have guilt toss. I had the same exact thing where Krele and Bartz were my physical guys.
Right.
So they had guilt toss and they had throw, and then I think they had item. And then my Reina had the white mage, or the white magic and the time magic.
Right.
And then I think once again item was the third one. And then not item.
Mix.
They all had mime as their main ability, because that's what mime class allows you. Mime class allows you to have 2 extra slots, not 3. Sorry. And then of course my last character, Ferris. She was a mime, and then she had mix from being a chemist, and then something else, probably black magic or a summon. I think it was a summon. It was a summon because I used her to summon Golem and Carbuncle to protect my party.
Mine was the summon too, actually.
Right. So we had basically the same party, except mine were all mimes. And here's the thing: because mine were all mimes, when I did the chemist move with mix, and I would mix Dragon Fang with a potion, the others would mime it on that same character 4 times, and that would be enough to get him to 99. And guess what? It doesn't take up any more items.
Wow.
They use the same effect without using up the items. So I got everybody, because so that Dragon Fang and potion mix, that makes your characters an extra 20 level for the remainder of the battle. Whoever you target with the chemist ability. And so I would repeat that with each mime. And so everybody was on a super high level at the beginning of the X-Death fight. I would just do that at the very beginning. And then I would summon Carbuncle and Golem to protect my party real quick. And because everybody was on 99, and 2 of my guys had Guild Toss, and everybody could mime the Guild Toss, I just had one guy do Guild Toss, which did 9999 damage, and then everybody would just continuously mime that.
Are you serious?
I'm serious. So all 4 of them were doing max damage with Guild Toss.
See, I didn't have the mime, so I had it was a little more difficult for me. I still did the chemist thing. I threw it down on Bart's, and I think I threw it down on all of them, actually, by the end, just to have the extra power for the summons when I wasn't casting protective magics. So I just did the Guild Toss on 2 characters, and was doing 10,000 for the most part, and then I ran out of Gil, which I did a couple times before, so I had to Gil farm for a little while, because I threw too much in the final fight.
Right.
And that's mostly why Bart's died in the very end, is because I was doing physical attacks with him, and then I got targeted, and then I think I casted Bahamut and finished him off. But so very similar with the
yeah.
With the items. I didn't have mime though.
You should have gotten the mime class.
It would have been so easy.
Godly. And I was having so much trouble with X-Death. I read on Reddit that X-Death, there's a lot of people that feel like X-Death is the hardest final boss in the series. And we can see why. It's a very difficult boss if you don't like do very cheap moves to kill him.
Even then, I died multiple times to him.
Right, I didn't.
Yeah.
The first time I did what I did when I like planned it out and I was like, I'm gonna do this, I killed him. So fucking fast. Everybody doing, and it was miming, so it wasn't taking up any more gil. I didn't realize that when I was telling you, and you would run out of gil like halfway through the battle, and you of course had to get more gil to beat X-Death.
Yeah.
When you do the gil toss on a mime, you don't use any more gil. Because mimes don't use up NP, mimes don't use up anything, they just repeat the effect.
That's sweet.
So, yeah, best class in the fucking game? Mime / samurai.
Yeah. I would second that from what you just told me.
So yeah, I think that's gonna end it for our official Ultima Final Fantasy podcast, Final Fantasy V review. Would you agree?
I think so.
All right, guys, we'll see you. Actually, we'll see you tomorrow. The fan fiction is everything's pushed a day later, so the fan fiction is gonna be out on Friday at midnight, so it'll be Saturday morning. And then the commentary will, of course, be Sunday morning instead. Sorry about that. We had some work schedule conflict, so we couldn't record the episode yesterday.
Yeah.
So we will see you guys tomorrow. Our next official episode should be out next Wednesday, though. Right?
Oh, yes.
Okay. We'll see you guys. This has been another production of Ultima Final Fantasy, the Ultimate Final Fantasy Podcast. The show was produced by Joseph DeGollier and Caleb Schweiss, with music and editing by Joseph DeGollier, parodies and clips from their respective authors, of course. You can get all of our episodes as well as our Let's Plays at ultimafinalfantasy.com. You can also contact us on Twitter at UFF Podcast, as well as our contact page on our website. Be sure to subscribe and review our podcast. Your reviews may get read on the show, and look forward to the next episode of Ultima Final Fantasy, the Ultimate Final Fantasy Podcast.